Hi everyone, welcome back. And if Sangusugabog was one of my most anticipated albums of the year, then Chatpile and Hayden Pedigo, I can't remember how to pronounce his name, were my most anticipated album of the year, hands down by far. This album was something that I was really captivated with by the first single. Hearing the Oklahoma City sludge noise rock legends take on this like indie guitar noise thing. It was such an interesting concept to hear about, to hear for the first time. But at first I was really worried. I didn't really like Radioactive Dreams as a single because it lacked a lot of context, and I knew that it was going to be a song that makes a lot more sense in the context of the album, which I think it does. But at the time, I was kind of hesitant, and I didn't listen to the second single because I wanted to just wait until the album came out. And then it did, and the whole thing is much more cohesive, and it makes a lot more sense, just as a whole. So let's talk about it. The guitar is such a change on this. The fact that it's almost entirely acoustic throughout the whole album really adds a new dynamic that Chatpile hasn't really worked with before. They have the banjo. I think it's a banjo. They have whatever's going on Lake Time in the 10 Killer soundtrack. And I actually think that soundtrack has a lot of direct influence on this album. I listened to it literally yesterday, and listening to both of them back to back really shows that Chatpile has had this kind of range in their back pocket the whole time. And this album really emphasizes that kind of like variety and range of sound they're capable of. I think outside inside, that little duology going on is a good starting point for that, because the first one is an acoustic guitar, and it's got some like synths in the background, and it's rising and it's rising and it's rising, leading straight into Demon Time, which is again a very acoustic song, a very, I'd say, introspective song. But you can say that about this whole album. And I think that vibe is really, it's a really interesting dynamic, because once you get all the way to the end of the album with Inside, it's this hectic, noisy cacophony. And then it leads into A Tear for Lucas, which I think is Raygun's best vocal performance so far on record. His usual wails and screams and growls are all amazing. I love the band, but like, man, that that was an actual like performance, and it was something very, very different from what we normally get, and I really fucked with it. um I also think the lyrical content of this album helps a lot. Trap is always dark, always very surreal, but in very realistic context, and this is a kind of stray away from that, because it's supposed to be about like post-apocalypse, or like on the brink of apocalypse living. So obviously still a very real reflection of the world we live in, and yet it feels a lot more surreal in that sense, in the sense that it does feel more imminent than the other albums, and their other material in general. It feels very much like a bleak reflection on where society's at. And again, that's always what Chappelle does, but I feel like this album really emphasizes that point, and it comes across a lot, I'd say, more transparently, given the more laid back and stripped back instrumentals, and how, again, Ray Gun's really just, he's singing this time. Usually he's yelling, screaming, crying, but now that he's singing, it comes across in such a different way. And I think Hayden's contribution to the album is not only the guitar work, but I think just that influence in general. And I haven't listened to any of that man's music, and just this alone makes me want to go do that, because I mean, if this is if this is the collaborative album he puts out, then his solo work must be good. I'm pretty convinced without checking. Um, but some of the songs themselves, Demon Time, fun song, fun bleak listen. Never Say Die is kind of the first chat pile song of the album, I'd say. It's a much more normal chat pile song. It's got all the classic features you'd expect. The bass, the kind of like insane guitar. Raygun has, you know, his more usual vocal cadences on it. There's also Fission Fusion, or is it Fusion Fission? I think it's Fission Fusion. And that one is an instrumental, but it starts off much more normal chat pile, and then it progressively winds down. And the whole album, not just Fission Fusion, but Fission Fusion's a good example of it, feels very Godspeed You, Black Emperor-y. I'm not sure if that was like an actual influence or I'm just kind of making shit up because that's what I know. But it really gives a very similar vibe because they kind of come from very similar places of reflections on society, degradation, shit like that. It feels like very analogous to Godspeed You. Trying to think what else. It's just a really good album. Like it's such an experimental, like left field take for the band, that it's really hard to put into words just how different it feels from the rest of their work with staying on such a thematic trajectory. You know, like this is like if you're talking about where the band's going thematically speaking, it makes a lot of sense. It's the next step, I'd say. But sonically speaking, it's completely out of left field. It's something I don't think anyone would have expected prior to the album being announced. But yeah, it's such a fun listen. I say fun, but it's a fun listen in so much as it's something really new from Chat Pile, and it's something that I feel like more bands, especially in like the experimental space, you know, the noisier bands should do every once in a while, because it shows off a really good range of just sound of what people can make, and I really like just hearing something new from bands. So this is a really nice change of pace, but again stays really on theme for the band themselves. I'd give this one, I think, an 8. I think an 8 sounds pretty good. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird because I don't have a lot to say, even though I think it's a really good album. So like, go listen to it, I guess. I'm really excited to see what they do after this, because I don't know. Like I don't really know what to expect. I kind of hope they do a return to form, but I want it to be more bombastic. I'm using that word a lot today. It's the word of the day. But yeah, go give it a listen.